This happened 8 years ago. I was 25 and visiting my grandma's house in the countryside for the summer. I always loved these visits. The house was old and creaky, but it felt warm and familiar. I knew the smell of the wood and the sound of the wind through the trees. It always made me feel safe. But that summer was different. One afternoon, I was working in the garden when I saw a scruffy dog. Its fur was matted, and it just sat there, staring at me. It looked lost, maybe abandoned, but it didn't come closer. I felt uneasy, like something was off about it. I shook it off. I had work to do. Days went by, and the dog kept returning. It watched me from the same spot every day, eyes locked on me. I called out a couple of times, but it never moved. I couldn't explain why it made me feel so on edge. Maybe it was just a stray, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I started to wander into the woods around my grandma's house. They felt different, almost strange. The deeper I went, the more uneasy I felt. I found symbols carved into the trees. They looked old, worn. A shiver ran through me every time I saw one. The air felt heavy, like it was pushing in on me. I used to just ignore the sounds at night, but soon I listened closely. It felt like the whispers were calling me, urging me to follow. I began to connect the dog with the strange symbols. Maybe it was guarding something. One morning, I noticed my garden tools missing. The next day, I found them under a bush or by the trees. It felt like I was being watched, like my family had secrets buried deep in the woods. The dog was still there, day after day. As summer ended, I stood in the garden where I first saw the dog. I needed to understand what it wanted. The sun felt warm, but the air was heavy with something else. I waited. Suddenly, the dog emerged from the trees, staring at me. I took a step forward. My heart was racing. "What do you want?" I asked. The dog didn't move. A cold rush ran through me. I felt a chill settle over everything around me. Then I heard a rustling behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there, just silence and stillness pressing in. I was confused and scared. I didn't know what was going on. I felt trapped in a strange puzzle. I stood there, frozen, waiting for an answer that never came. The dog stared at me, unblinking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. What was it all about? I never found out, but that summer changed me forever. I didn't sleep well that night. The dog's stare haunted my dreams. I kept waking up, heart pounding, convinced someone was watching me. I had to figure out what was going on. The next morning, I decided to confront the dog head-on. I grabbed my hiking boots and headed for the woods. The air was cool, and a thin mist hung low over the ground. I felt like I was acting foolishly, but I was determined. As I walked deeper into the trees, I kept my eyes peeled for the old symbols. They felt like a map, guiding me deeper into something I didn't yet understand. After a while, I found a clearing. It was quiet and open, with sunlight filtering through the leaves. But I didn't see the dog. I felt a twinge of disappointment mixed with relief. Maybe today would be different. Maybe I could escape the tension that seemed to cling to me in the garden. Then I noticed something unusual. In the center of the clearing, there was a pile of stones stacked in a strange formation. I walked closer, curiosity pulling me in. Each stone felt oddly warm, almost alive. As I reached to touch one, a chill ran down my spine. It felt wrong, like it was telling me to back off. I pulled my hand back and scanned the trees, expecting the dog to appear. But still, nothing. The quiet weighed heavily on me. I turned to leave, but then I heard a low growl behind me. My heart sank. I spun around. There it was, the dog, standing among the trees. But it looked different now. Its eyes glowed in the dim light. I couldn't tell if it was anger or a warning, but it made my blood run cold. I took a cautious step back, wanting to put space between us. "Why are you here?" I blurted out, my voice shaky. It didn't answer. Instead, it inched closer, eyes locked on mine. I felt an impulse to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. The air thickened, and the whispers I had heard at night filled my ears once again, more urgent than before. Then I spotted something glimmering in the dirt near the stones. My curiosity got the better of me. I kneeled down, and using my fingers, I scraped away the dirt. It was a small silver pendant engraved with a symbol that matched the ones on the trees. The moment I picked it up, something shifted in the atmosphere. The dog barked, the sound echoing through the clearing. I felt my heart race. Something was definitely wrong. Everything about this place screamed for me to leave. I stood up and looked back at the dog, who now stood rigid, as if bracing for something. That's when I heard it, a rustling from behind the trees, louder and closer. My heart dropped. I wasn't alone. The dog looked toward the sound, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in its eyes. I didn't waste another moment. I turned and ran back toward the way I came, the pendant clutched tightly in my fist. I had to reach the house. Whatever secret the woods held was awakening, and I felt like I was about to be caught in its grasp. I sprinted through the trees, branches scratching at my arms as if trying to hold me back. The sound of rustling followed close behind. I didn't dare look back. All I could think was to keep moving, keep putting distance between me and whatever was lingering in the woods. My breath came in sharp gasps, and panic tightened around my chest. The pendant felt heavy in my pocket, like it was alive and demanding me to stop. But I couldn't. Not here. Not now. The path twisted and turned, but I forced myself to recall the way back. I had to get to the garden. Safety was less than a quarter of a mile away. I was almost there. Then, just as I rounded a particularly thick cluster of trees, the ground gave way beneath me. I stumbled down a small slope, falling hard onto the damp earth. My palms sank into the dirt, and a jolt of pain shot through my knee. I pushed myself up, wincing, and glanced around, trying to locate where I had fallen from. The rustling had stopped, leaving an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. I took a moment to gather myself. The clearing was close. I could see the sunlight breaking through the trees ahead. Just a little further. I could make it. As I stumbled toward the exit of the woods, I sensed movement from the corner of my eye. My heart skipped. It was the dog again, standing motionless just beyond the trees. Something flickered in its eyes, and I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. This time it appeared bigger, more formidable. "Get away from me!" I shouted, though my voice quaked with uncertainty. The dog didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head, almost as if it was considering my words. In that moment of hesitation, it felt like time stood still. Then, to my shock, it turned and raced deeper into the woods. I stood there, confusion swirling in my mind. Why had it run? Wasn't it supposed to be guarding something? Without thinking, I trotted after it, driven by a mix of hope and dread. Maybe it was leading me to a way out. I followed its path, moving faster with every step. Then I noticed something unusual again. The trees seemed to shift, and the air grew thick and heavy. There was a faint glow ahead, pulsing like a heartbeat. That's when I saw it. A small stone altar, surrounded by the same symbols I'd seen before, only now they glowed with an otherworldly light. The pendant in my pocket felt warm against my skin, vibrating with energy. I hesitated, caught between fear and fascination. I could feel the dog's presence lingering close by, and deep down, I knew I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Suddenly, I heard the whispers again, clearer this time. It was a language I didn't understand, rising and falling like a chant. That very moment, I felt something shift within the trees behind me. A shadow emerged, and from it, figures began to take form. I froze, dread settling heavily in the pit of my stomach. I was not alone, and whatever was about to happen felt beyond what I could comprehend. The pendant pulsed harder, as if urging me to make a choice. Stay or run, I whispered to myself, knowing that my decision could change everything. The figures stepped closer, their shapes becoming more distinct. They looked human, but something about them felt off, like shadows dressed in flesh. My heart raced as panic clenched my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground, paralyzed by the weight of their presence. Suddenly, one of the figures raised a hand. I flinched, preparing for the worst. But instead of attacking, they beckoned me forward. The air grew colder as I shivered, my breath visible like smoke. The pendant in my pocket burned against my skin, urging me to take a step toward this chaotic scene. "Come," a voice whispered, echoing through the clearing. It was soft yet powerful, pulling me in. I glanced back, checking for the dog, but it had vanished. Whatever instinct had compelled me to chase it was now replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The figures exchanged glances, their eyes glowing faintly, illuminating the darkness surrounding us. "We are the guardians of the light," one replied, its voice melodic as if it were singing a spell. "The pendant you carry binds you to this place." The pendant. I had thought it was just a trinket my grandmother had given me, something to remember her by. Now it felt like a weight, a chain anchoring me here, linking me to these strange beings. A surge of fear mixed with understanding flooded my senses. "I didn't mean to trespass," I stammered, but my words sank in the thick air. I wasn't alone in my fear. The guardians seemed agitated, their forms flickering like candle flames caught in a wind. "You hold the key to a door that's been closed for far too long," another figure said. "You must make a choice." "Choice?" I echoed, fighting the urge to back away. "What do you want from me?" The first figure stepped closer, and a blue light shimmered between us. "There is danger approaching. The darkness stirs, and only you can decide its fate." I looked around, my heart pounding as I searched for answers. I had come here to escape, not to confront whatever this was. But the glow of the altar beckoned, more intense now, stirring something inside me. "What kind of danger?" I asked, my voice trembling. The first figure gestured toward the woods where I had come from. "It's already here," it warned. "But you hold the power to contain it. The pendant will guide you if you accept its call." Before I could respond, the ground beneath me shook. The tree branches creaked ominously overhead as shadows started to seep from the depths of the woods, creeping towards us like dark smoke. I trembled. The guardians were no longer just figures, but beings of light wrapping around me like a cocoon, urging me forward. "Make your choice now," they cried in unison, their voices rising above the chaos. I took a shaky breath, my mind racing. This was my moment to choose. Stay and confront whatever darkness lay ahead, or run back into the safety of the known, even if it meant abandoning the pendant and everything it represented. Just as I was about to decide, a howl pierced through the air, a primal sound that echoed my own fear. The shadows were getting closer. "Now!" they shouted, and all I could think was that whatever I chose, there might be no turning back. My heart raced as I stood frozen. The shadows twisted and churned at the edge of the clearing, hungry for something, perhaps me. A primal instinct told me to run, but the pendant pulsed, drawing me into the light of the guardians. "Make your choice," the guardians urged, their voices growing more desperate. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air pierce my lungs. "Okay," I yelled, surprising even myself. "I'll help. Tell me what to do." The blue light from the guardians flared brighter, momentarily illuminating the trees around us. I felt the warmth seep into my chest, replacing the cold dread that had clung to me. "Good," the first guardian said, its form shimmering. "Trust in the pendant. It will guide you in the face of the darkness." Before I could ask what that meant, the shadows lunged forward, pouring into the clearing. They surged like a black tide, tendrils reaching out with menacing intent. My instincts kicked in. I instinctively raised my hand, feeling a rush of energy pulse from the pendant. Suddenly, a beam of blue light shot out from the pendant, striking the shadows. The darkness hissed and recoiled, as if burned. "Keep it focused," the guardian shouted. "Prepare to unleash its power." I concentrated, my heart hammering like a drum. The shadows writhed, shifting their forms as they advanced again. I could see distorted faces within them, eyes gleaming with malice. Each moment escalated the terror in my chest, but I clutched the pendant tighter. "What do I do?" I shouted. "It's not enough." "You must unleash what is within," a guardian called, its voice ringing with urgency. "Let your fear become your strength." With a sudden surge of resolve, I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the pendant spread through my body. I thought of my grandmother, her gentle smile, and the stories she had shared about family and bravery. Maybe it was those memories that filled my heart with courage. My fear twisted, transforming into something powerful. "I accept this!" I screamed, opening my eyes to face the shadows. My voice echoed like thunder, and with that declaration, the pendant blazed, dispelling the darkness flooding toward me. A shockwave rippled through the clearing, pushing the shadows back and leaving me breathless. Yet, even as I believed I had gained the upper hand, I noticed a new figure emerging from the blackness. It was unlike the guardians, towering and grotesque, with eyes that glowed a fiery red. It moved as if commanding the shadows, and as it stepped into the light, a cold dread settled in my stomach. "That's just the beginning," the first guardian cautioned, its form flickering. "This is merely a taste of the darkness to come." I stared at the figure, and my breath caught in my throat. There was no turning back now. The fight had only just begun. That's when I realized this darkness was here for me. The figure loomed before me, its presence swallowing the light. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I gripped the pendant tighter, its warmth still radiating through my palm. "What do I do?" I yelled again. But this time I wasn't expecting an answer. The first guardian drifted closer, its form still flickering, as if energy washed over it like waves. "You must confront the darkness," it urged. "Do not let it control you." As the grotesque figure shifted, I could see the shadows swirling around it, almost like they were waiting for its command. I took a hesitant step forward, testing the strength of the power within me. I could see the distorted faces again, and they seemed to plead for help. Or was it a trap? The guardian's voice resonated once more. "Focus. You have the strength. You have the pendant." I concentrated, recalling my grandmother's stories of bravery. They felt like a lifeline in that moment. I envisioned myself strong and fearless. I could do this. Maybe. The shadows surged toward me again, their grip more insistent. I raised the pendant high, channeling everything I felt: fear, hope, and the heavy weight of responsibility. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, and to my surprise, the shadows halted, swirling uncertainly in the air. Fueled by the rush of power, I took a deep breath. "You won't take anyone from me!" A blast of blue energy surged from the pendant, colliding with the darkness undoubtedly. The shadows writhed, a furious hiss erupting from the depths. It was as if the darkness was trying to fight back, reaching toward me with desperate tendrils. I faltered, catching a glimpse of the twisted eyes in the shadow. Was I simply making everything worse? But just as I began to waver, the guardian beside me added its strength to my own. The warmth of its energy wrapped around me, lending me confidence. "You are not alone,"
proclaimed with a voice that echoed through the clearing like a chant. Suddenly, the figure shifted, its fiery eyes locked onto mine, and a deep growl reverberated from its throat. "You will regret this defiance," it snarled, the words trailing off like smoke. Fear curled in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I wasn't just fighting for my life, I was fighting for the people I loved. In that moment, something shifted again. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a faint glow rising from the ground, not far from where I stood. A glimmer of movement caught my attention, and my heart raced. I recognized that glow. It was another pendant, one that looked just like mine. Then, everything went dark. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness that enveloped me. The familiar weight of fear settled over my chest again. I could still hear the hiss of the shadows, but the guardian's voice faded, and I was alone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence answered me. I fumbled, trying to find the pendant, but the darkness seemed to smother my every move. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm me, a soft light began to glow around me. I squinted, trying to discern its source. Then I remembered the other pendant, the one I had seen just before everything went blank. I wasn't sure how, but I felt a pull toward that glow. It was as if it anticipated my arrival. With careful steps, I moved toward it, managing to avoid tripping over unseen obstacles. As I drew closer, the surroundings began to take shape. The air felt thick, pressing against me like an invisible weight. I reached for the light, and my fingers brushed against something cool and smooth. It was the pendant. I clasped it in my hands, its energy pulsing against my skin, resonating like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the shadows reappeared, swirling fiercely. They recoiled from the light, revealing brief glimpses of the dark figure hidden within. "Do you think you can win?" the voice snarled, a chilling echo that seemed to come from all directions. "You're nothing without your fear." "No!" I shouted defiantly. The power of the pendant surged, and I unleashed a wave of energy. The light flickered, dazzling and bright, pushing back at the encroaching shadows. The darkness hissed, but I stood firm, drawing strength from the pendant now held with both hands. "You won't take me or anyone else," I shouted again, my voice growing steadier. I was determined to reclaim control. Then a loud crack broke through the air, a sound like shattering glass. Instantly, the shadows recoiled, retreating into corners I couldn't see. But then something changed. The dark figure let out a roar, a sound that vibrated through the ground beneath me. Suddenly, the light of the pendants flared brighter, illuminating everything around me. I could see the grotesque figure clearly now, features distorted, a face of pure malice. But that wasn't the only surprise.
Beside it, silhouettes of other figures emerged, vague but unmistakably human. They looked familiar, almost like the faces I had seen before, all pleading for help. They were trapped in the darkness. My heart dropped as I realized the magnitude of the battle ahead. "Enough!" I cried out again, but doubt laced my conviction. What if my power wasn't enough? In that moment, clarity dawned. I needed help. I wasn't alone in this fight, even if I felt like I was. I glanced back at the guardians. "I can't do this by myself," I yelled. The first guardian surged forward, glowing brighter as it wrapped its energy around me. "Together, you will be unstoppable. Focus, trust the light." That's when the darkness lunged, the shadows clawing forward, seeking to engulf us whole. With my heart racing, I prepared for the worst. I spotted the original pendant I had raised earlier. This has to work, I thought, and in a surge of desperation, I pointed both pendants toward the looming mass of shadows. The light intertwined, and a beam of radiant energy shot forth. But just before the blast connected, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet. I stumbled, nearly losing my stance. "Get ready!" shouted the guardian beside me. "This is just the beginning." My heart raced as the shadows surged forward again. I knew then I couldn't retreat, but I had no idea what would happen next. The shadows crashed toward me like a wave, wild and unforgiving. I braced myself, gripping the pendants tighter, as the combined light flickered, revealing terrifying glimpses of the dark figure. "Focus," the guardian urged, the energy wrapping around me like a protective cocoon. I could feel its determination feeding into my own, but fear was a steady undertow. I swallowed hard, trying to block out the roar of doubt shaking my core. With a fierce shout, I released the beam of light again. This time it pierced through the darkness, illuminating the grotesque figure more vividly. I could see its malformed features warped with rage, eyes glinting like shards of glass. It lunged, and the shadows rippled around it like smoke, threatening to snuff out the light. "It thrives on fear. You have to fight it," the guardian called, his voice steady even as chaos erupted around us. I concentrated harder, pushing the fear back. I remembered the faces I had seen, those trapped within the shadows. I couldn't let them down, not now. The light shifted, expanding as I poured my thoughts into it. I thought of courage, of those who had fought before me. I could feel the strings of connection binding us, transcending the darkness. "Together!" I yelled, my voice echoing through the void. Suddenly, from behind the swirling shadows, I caught sight of one familiar face. It was a girl, her expression hauntingly familiar, eyes wide with terror. "Help us!" she cried, pleas spilling from her lips like blood from a wound. I recognized her from my dreams, a fragment of a memory I'd thought was forgotten. My heart plummeted. The shadows surged forward, threatening to engulf her too. "No!" I screamed, lunging forward with everything I had. The pendants blazed with light at my command. The darkness hissed, recoiling, but I could feel its relentless hunger. This was no ordinary fight. It tapped into something deeper. With each pulse of energy, I sensed the shadow's desperation, clawing to return to the depths. "You won't take her!" I shouted, driving the beam forward again. But then, a chilling laugh resonated through the chaos. It wasn't just the darkness. It was a voice hauntingly familiar. "Do you really think you can save her?" it taunted, mocking my efforts. "You're just a child playing with fire." Everything around me began to spin, and for a moment I lost my footing. "No!" I gasped, fighting to stay grounded amidst the chaos. Doubt crept back in, wrapping around my heart like a cold hand. Then, without warning, the ground beneath me cracked. The vibrations felt alive, sending ripples through reality itself. The Guardian's energy flickered, uncertainty shimmering in its radiance. I looked around, panic tightening my chest. "What's happening?" I shouted. "There's more at stake than you realize," the Guardian replied grimly. "It's feeding on not just fear, but also your doubts. You must remember who you are." Just as I collected myself, a figure stepped out from behind the shadows. It was another Guardian, similar but different. Its dark wings unfurled like an ominous cloak, yet it radiated a different energy. Twisted yet alluring, it felt like a test. "Choose your side," it said, its voice cold. "You can't save everyone." A rush of adrenaline filled me. A choice lay before me, and the stakes had just become higher. I had to act fast. Then everything went dark. I felt myself slipping, like I was being pulled into an abyss. For a heartbeat, I thought I could hear soft whispers, echoing fragments of scattered thoughts. Then, out of that darkness, a light flickered. It wasn't the golden radiance of the pendants, but more of a dull glow, revealing silhouettes of shapes moving about, dancing just beyond reach. I forced myself to focus, pulling the memory of the Guardian's urgency to the forefront of my mind. "Remember who you are," echoed in my thoughts. I had to shake off the sensation of drifting. I steadied my breathing, reminding myself of why I was here. The girl, the trapped souls, the fight against the shadows. The dull glow brightened, and suddenly I found myself standing on solid ground again. The chaos faded, but a lingering chill crawled up my spine. I blinked, adjusting to the dim light that surrounded me. I realized I was not in the swirling shadows anymore, but into a strange landscape that felt oddly dreamlike, as if I had stepped into an old painting. Before me were trees with twisted trunks and gnarled branches, their leaves shimmering as if made of glass.
Looked beautiful, but eerie. The air crackled with energy, heavy with an unspoken tension. I felt the pendants warm against my chest, a reminder of my purpose. Then I saw them, figures ghosting between the trees, shadows. My heart raced. They moved like wraiths, searching, flickering in and out of sight. I caught snippets of their muffled cries and whispers, desperate for help. I stepped forward, compelled. If I could just reach them. "Stop!" A voice shattered the silence. I spun around to see the dark-winged guardian standing just behind me, its expression unreadable. "Don't approach." "Why not? They need my help," I protested. The dark guardian shook its head slowly, steps trailing closer. "What you see cannot be saved, only consumed. They are illusions, traps designed to lure you deeper into despair." I froze as pieces of my fear snapped into place. Doubt surged again, battling the resolve I had just found. "But they look so real. I can't just abandon them." "They will lead you astray," it warned, its tone firm. "The enemy knows your heart. It knows your weakness." I felt the weight of its words hanging thick in the air as I turned back to the suffering shadows. Their faces twisted in agony, eyes pleading for rescue. It felt impossible to just stand there, watching as they floundered within their torment. "Fight!" I shouted, raising the pendants. "Together!" The shadows recoiled slightly at my words, hesitation creeping into my mind. Could I really fight for them without knowing the truth? Just then, a voice broke through the den again, more vibrant this time. "Help us!" It was her, the girl from my dreams. Panic washed over me. That's when I saw it. A dark figure lurking behind the girl, feeding off her fear. It was the embodiment of everything I had fought against, growing stronger as her hopelessness deepened. "Stop!" I yelled, but the shadows tightened around the girl, pulling her back into the darkness. The dark guardian smiled coldly, its wings extending menacingly. "You can't save what isn't real," it taunted, and I realized my fight had only just begun. But I couldn't let her go, not again. The struggle surged within me, but now it felt different. I had to know the truth behind the shadows. With determination flooding my veins, I prepared to face the darkness and the deception it fed on. Whatever it took, I would find a way to break through. The dark guardian's laughter echoed through the twisted landscape, mingling with the desperate whispers of the shadows surrounding us. My heart raced as I faced the growing void, the girl's figure nearly lost in its depths. I was filled with that familiar surge of fear, but it now felt like something more, a call to action. The pendants in my hands pulsed in recognition, their resonance igniting a flicker of hope within me. "I won't abandon you," I called out.
my voice firm despite the uncertainty curling in my stomach. With determination, I took a step forward. "You can't save her," the Dark Guardian warned again, its mocking tone resonating. But I steeled my resolve, pushing aside its attempts to sow doubt. "She deserves the chance to be free," I shouted, issuing a challenge to the darkness that sprawled ahead like fingers of despair. I began to channel the energy of the pendants, focusing on the light. The symbols carved on the trees flashed in my mind, their meanings now crystallizing before me. I understood they were more than warnings. They were a guide, a connection to everything that had come before me. They told of the balance between light and dark, of the fight against despair. As if responding to my thoughts, the aura of the pendants brightened, illuminating the shadows that threatened to devour me. I could see their forms writhing, dark tendrils that shifted like smoke in the air, grasping for what they sought to ensnare. I let their whispered fears wash over me first, acknowledging their suffering. "You don't have to be trapped," I cried out, as much for them as for myself. I felt their hesitation, and in that space of uncertainty, the girl's face emerged in my mind again. Alive and illuminated with the strength of the light, she looked on, urging me forward. "Help!" she called, reaching out. With that simple word, I knew my purpose. It was time to confront the dark figure and all it represented. I summoned the essence of the guardians who had been beside me, their strength intertwined with my own. Together, we created a shield, an emerging barrier of light wrapped around me as I approached the shadows that clawed at the air. "Let her go!" I shouted, and as the words broke through the fog of chaos, I threw the power of the pendants forward, the energy bursting forth like a supersonic wave. Light engulfed the shadows, piercing through the veil of darkness and illuminating the grotesque figure that loomed menacingly before me. As the beam cut through, the dark figure screeched, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. A deep, visceral sense of fear wrapped around me, but I held my ground. I had the strength of recollections, of courage, of family, and of the warmth of home to back me. With fierce determination, I pushed forward, channeling everything I felt into that vibrant light. The air snapped and crackled, the shadows recoiling as if burned. Yet, even as I pressed ahead, the shadows didn't relent. "Foolish child!" the dark figure roared, tendrils lashing out from its shadowy mass. Each advance deepened its desperate fury, clawing at the edges of my resolve. "You think this will change anything? You think you can defy me? Watch me," I shouted back, letting the pendants soar together, drawing their light into a crescendo, a manifestation of every memory, every ounce of bravery I could muster. The shadows quivered, faltering against the force of my declaration. With one final charge of power, I unleashed the pendants, creating a cascade of brilliant light that illuminated every crevice of the dark, seeking out the tortured souls trapped within. They flickered, wavering between hope and despair, resonating with the radiant force around me. And just like that, I felt the shift. The shadows pulled back, hovering on the edge as the light surged relentlessly. Voices of despair began to intertwine with echoes of laughter. The sound gained strength, a new force stirring in their depths. For a second, I could see beyond the darkness. Glimpses of faces previously obscured, now lit with determination. I felt them break free from the dark mass that enslaved them and step toward the light I had ignited. The haunting cries transitioned into songs of liberation as the guardians joined me, their energy supporting every ripple of hope emerging from the shadows. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the dark figure sputtered and twisted, changed by the energy of the light. "You may win this time," it hissed, but I could hear its power waning. But I will return. The entity crumbled into wisps of shadow, dispersing into the ether as the bonds that kept the others captive broke. I felt the earth beneath me tremble, but the coldness of dread dissipated as the beings freed from their agony surged forward, grasping at the light that filled the clearing. As the last breath of darkness retreated into the woods, the palpable silence that fell was tinged with something bittersweet. I watched with evident emotion as exhausted souls poured towards me, faces grateful and familiar, brought back from the abyss. They smiled through the tears, but the moment felt transient, dance-like, a memory teetering on the edge of permanence. But even as I basked in the relief of survival, unease gnawed at my heart. The shadows had receded, but they hadn't been destroyed. They lingered, hovering just outside the periphery of what I could fully comprehend. Whispers still echoed in the air, the lingering echoes of dread and caution, reminders that darkness could return, hidden in the depths of the woods. As I stood there, surrounded by warmth and gratitude, I felt the question growing in the back of my mind. What had I awakened in this place? What had I unknowingly set into motion? I might have saved them for now, but the fight between light and dark was never truly over. Days later, when I left my grandmother's house for the last time, a mix of comfort and tension filled my spirit. I still carried the pendant with me, along with the weight of unanswered questions and the chilling reminder of shadows that still lurk too close for comfort. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if the remnants of darkness still linger in those woods, if the shadows still whisper, waiting for a time to emerge again. But mostly, I try not to think about it. To recall is to confront that I barely escaped. That, a restless balance remained, waiting until fate called upon me once more.